I'm Ben Price, and I'm now the Education Director for the Community Environmental Legal Defense Fund, CELDEF. And I started off in 2003 and then 2004 full-time doing community organizing with CELDEF. And early on, we were working with municipalities in the United States, mostly in Pennsylvania, which is where I'm based. And that was an attempt to empower local communities to use their municipal governments to protect their health and safety and their rights on lots of issues, not just environmental. But my staff and I, we were looking at Christopher Stone's book, Should Trees Have Standing? Written in 1972 based on a thought experiment that he shared with his law students, proposing the idea, what if non-human things or entities had legal rights? And so reading through that and discussing it with colleagues, we were saying, well, it's just a thought experiment, but what if we actually implemented it somewhere? And it was just in the air among us talking about it. And then I met Kathy Miarelli, who is a high school nurse and a member of Borough Council in Tamaqua in Pennsylvania. And she was very concerned about a plan, and I won't go into all the details, but the plan was for years to bring truck after truck, just hundreds a day, dumping waste into these open mines because it's anthracite coal country. And Kathy thought it was a horrible idea. This open pit that they were planning to dump into, the Springdale pit, was on the hill right up above the high school. And she thought, well, we know that's going to leach out and into the water because all the mine waste does already. So we sat down and we talked. And I said, it's really impossible for this little borough to stop this. You don't own the land. It's not yours. If you were property owner under American law, you could say, no, it's mine. You can't touch it. But you don't own it. And so there's not much you can do. She said, what about the kids? What about our health and safety? Unfortunately, the state preempts, in other words, forbids local governments from superseding the regulations that are based at the state, that are adopted by the state. So in other words, municipalities can't protect themselves any more adequately than the state allows with their regulations. And I said, the only thing that could really make this happen is if you had some rights to weigh against the corporate personhood rights that would be brought against you in a court. The corporate lawyers would sue the municipality for violating what they would call the civil rights of the corporate person. And so I said, this is an idea that we've been thinking about. What do you think? What if the Springdale pit and the ecosystem around it had rights of its own? She said, well, let's try it. And I'm really shortening the story because it was a lot more than that. And so we developed a rather simple ordinance, and it was about corporate waste and not depositing it in the community on the basis of protecting the rights of the ecosystem, which were declared in that law. And that included rights that you've probably heard many times before, like the right to exist, to flourish, naturally evolve, and be restored when damaged. Well, it passed on September 19th, 2006.
And how did you get the support? There were people being skeptic, I guess.
Everyone was skeptical, but the community wasn't. And so in community organizing, it's not just going to the elected officials and asking them to do something. It's about finding the support within the community if it's there. And so my job was to hold meetings and educate and bring people up to speed on what this idea was. And to be honest, and let them know that the likelihood of this withstanding a legal test is very slim. Matter of fact, non-existent. There is no legal precedent for an ecosystem or a creature other than a human being and a corporation having rights. And I deny the creaturehood of corporations for that matter, just to be clear. And it was, I'm trying to think how long it took, but it was a matter of months of going through and having weekend seminars on rights and legal history of the United States and how this might fit into it and alter it and the implications, without getting too deep and too legalese, language of it, because this is, regular working people. And they wanted to know what this would do. There was a large amount of support, and we had, in a small community, we had a significant percentage of the population show up at the meetings that we held to talk about this. And when it was brought to a vote in council, the room was packed. We had a 7-member council and a mayor, and there are various types of municipal governments, but the mayor has only a vote if there's a tie. And in this case, one of the members was missing that day. There was 3 votes for the bill, 3 votes against it. And the mayor, who actually participated in some of our educational offerings, and who was a friend of the people as opposed to of the businesses and the money, decided he would vote for it, and it became law. First in the world recognizing rights of ecosystems and of nature. So that's the short of it. That's the short story.
How does it connect to ideas which were already in the place, like what this place means to people?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I'm not sure that there are that many people now in 2025 who think much about it. But the law is still in the books. There it is. It's like a lot of laws that are advocated for. And rights of nature wasn't something anybody thought about in 2006. They'd never heard of it. But these days, and Kathy has been in a number of feature films, the documentaries that have been done about it, and people have heard about it now. And there is some pride, I think, of having done this for the first time anywhere in that community. So, yeah, it's not, of course, the only one. 2 years later, Ecuador enacted a constitution that brought the rights of nature for the whole nation. And the indigenous population was very instrumental in that, because here in the United States, we don't have an indigenous population with a voice in our culture and our society that can be heard. That's different in Ecuador.
Getting better though, don't you think?
It's through the effort of indigenous people.
Yeah.
Yes. And
was there a connection and exchange with the campaign in Ecuador?
Yes. Matter of fact, there was an NGO here in the U.S. that was doing work in Ecuador, and they let the folks with the Ecuadorian, I believe it was the Constitutional Congress, or the groups that was working on the language, and invited some of our staff to go in and consult on what they were doing. We don't take any credit for that. It was just we had conversations with them, let them know what we did in Tamagua. And it was wonderful then to have Ecuador enact, by a large percentage, popular vote to adopt that constitution. That was really great. And as we know, here we are in 2025 gathering in New York and going to go and talk to the UN about rights of nature. And that's a significant thing.